Welcome to the Passion of Entrepreneurship. I am interviewing every weekday in June, and it's sort of over. I'll be telling you about that. An incredible entrepreneur to dive into their journey, what it is that fuels it, and what keeps them going through all their challenges. And today it's my pleasure to welcome a dear friend, Jeanie Lobato. Welcome, Jeanie, to
Yeah,
and Jeanie you could say that she's an accidental entrepreneur because she had no intention of doing this, correct?
absolutely.
So we were just chatting before the show, and you were saying you started out going into art in college, right? And then you followed the corporate route.
Yeah, so I went to a small private art college, Maryland College of Art, to be a painter. I always wanted to be a painter when I grew up, as long as I could remember. And I got there when I was 18, wanting to be a painter, and quickly found the graphic design, web design, animation route, and was intrigued by that just overall, like using art for that, and also was intrigued by the price tag of the salary that comes along with that.
Cha-ching.
Yeah, and that's what I did. I pretty much like stayed as a general fine arts major, so I stayed doing a lot of like the painting and ceramics and those types of fine art classes, but also took a lot of graphic design, web design classes, and that's what I wound up doing for the next 10 years. And I don't
Okay.
regret it, but
Yeah. And so you were on that corporate route, right? You were working in marketing, and that was where did you see yourself going in your career before things shifted for you?
well, that was in the dot com era in 2000, early 2000s. So at that point, for people, the sky was the limit in terms of earning potential, in terms of climbing the corporate ladder. So I just saw myself, and I was quickly climbing that corporate ladder until the crash.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, I was stuck. So I then I got stuck in
Right.
in what not only in my job position, but I also got stuck in when I was from maybe 2001 to 5ish. I was doing really fun projects for really large Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies, and the for them the sky was the limit. Also in terms of budget, they didn't really have budgets.
So you could do whatever you wanted almost. It was, oh my God, a playground.
It was a playground for a creative spirit. It was
Yeah.
amazing, and also um, the learning potential was there too. So it was very, very exciting. And then it went from that to the next day, having to do projects that just weren't fun, projects that didn't fulfill me, and um, the budgets were almost non-existent.
All right.
And slowly we started the company I was working for started losing those large clients. We had to fight for them. So it was a big shift at that
Right.
time period.
So how did the seed for draw change emerge? How did that start in that time?
Right around that time, actually, because so my creativity went from I was able to use my creativity every day,
Mm-hmm.
and I was very creatively fulfilled to the next day scraping by in terms of like the creativity, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
And okay, and I was just realized that I can't do this for the rest of my life because I didn't see. Obviously, there was an up and down, and there's ups and downs in the economy. But as a 25-year-old at the time, I was just like miserable and thinking that this was going to be it forever. And also I wasn't willing to wait for it, nor did I even could fathom that things would go back up. And honestly, I wouldn't have waited that long anyway. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know, maybe 7 years. So it would have been 7 years of doing things that I didn't like. So I started to think about what my passions in life were. First, I stayed unfulfilled and unhappy for maybe 3 years
Wow.
before I realized that it just wasn't going to get better. It just fast enough. So I started to think about what my passions in life were and still are, and they are art, children, and helping people. And I sort of combined those three and realized that it's, for me at the time, I conceived an arts nonprofit organization out of that our target audience is children.
So that, I mean, that's a massive shift from the the corporate journey. But so I can understand how it took you 3 years to say, okay, I'm going to shift almost to get to that place where you could.
Yeah, it was a shift in everything.
Yeah.
Everything from mindset to income and then
Yes.
everything in between. Um, and, I know we're talking about entrepreneurship. It never crossed my mind that I would be an entrepreneur. Even at that time, I was running the business for a year before people like little by little started calling me an entrepreneur. And I was like, I like fought it tooth and nail. I'm like, I don't know anything about running a business. Here I'm doing it for a year. I don't know anything about running a business. So I don't, I'm a person that has a passion and I'm uh, doing this from a passion. And so it's really interesting. I mean, now, 11 years in, I embrace it.
Yes.
And I still don't know what I'm doing, but I'm embracing the term, whatever that means, the term means. But yeah, it
Well,
was
back then they didn't. I don't know if they even had the term social entrepreneur back then, right?
right. No, now they even have degrees for it and
Yeah.
colleges and schools and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I could understand the reluctance. So, as you say, you left the big salary, the big job, all of that to. And what were the starting points of Draw Change for you? Where was it that you really started it out and that it grew from?
Um, where did I start? I started wanting to expose, or I started wanting to put the arts back because in several states in the United States, arts is almost non-existent in the school system. So I started wanting to put arts back into the school system.
Okay.
That was my main focus. And I, it actually, it was about a year of trying to do that. And just the red tape was enormous. And I'm offering a free service. At that point, I had even printed a magazine for children um, regarding art. And I wanted to drop it off in schools for free. I wanted to do all this for free, and I just couldn't
They
give.
wouldn't take it.
No, exactly, they wouldn't take it. I even like I went higher and higher in the school system. I was already living in Atlanta at the time, and because they kept on saying, no, you have to ask this person, you have to ask this person, to the point where it's like almost up to the superintendent of schools, and they didn't want it. I
So
mean,
you
that's a strong use of words, but they wouldn't take it is a better way to say it.
right, because it would mean I think there's a lot of resistance to change there. They'd have to do a lot of work to adapt it into the system, probably, and probably people are reluctant to take on that.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, you said you were giving this to them free, so how were you getting funding for this, for you?
Um, I wasn't.
Okay. So this was all passion and all on your earnings from your career.
Yeah, yeah. So for a year, I did both. For a year, I stayed at the corporate job, the
Yeah.
marketing job, and I ran Draw Change. So for a year, it was great. Um, then I was laid off, um, which was the biggest blessing in disguise. I was laid off, so I collected unemployment for a while. So I was living off of that. And then, yeah, yeah, just scraping by pretty much. And it was very stressful, but in a way, doing it happily because for the first time in my life, I was, even though I loved what I was doing, I loved what I went to school for, and then I loved what I was doing for those, let's say 6 years until I started to, not love it. I wasn't fulfilled.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a fine line there. I loved it, but I wasn't fulfilled. Um, so I was fulfilled. So that's what sustained me in a way.
Yeah. Okay. So so now the school system is not accepting it. What's the next path that you take to move Draw Change forward?
So I met someone that suggested that maybe go into the after school programs because a lot of times the after school programs are independently run. And that led me to researching after school programs and then learning about the homelessness epidemic, not only in Atlanta, but in the United States. And that it kind of quickly shifted from after school programs to homelessness. And I remember one homeless shelter here in Atlanta that we actually still have a program, an ongoing program there till today. They welcomed us with open arms, and I was like, oh, okay, this was easy. And this is it's one and the same. It's the arts are not in the school system, but these children are still receiving art after school at their homeless shelter. And that also evolved into using art more so from a therapeutic perspective because
Right.
I quickly realized the gravity of the trauma that these children living in homeless shelters or on the streets uh, were experiencing and had experienced their entire life. So then it led more towards art therapy. I'm not an art therapist, I'm an artist, but Draw Change works with art therapists and develops our curriculum with art therapists' help.
Okay. So, you know, if you can take us to that, when you were digging in about the homelessness and that awakening happened to you, what were some of the things that started to open your eyes to that realized this is where I need to work?
Uh, I always knew as an adult, I always was present to how much the arts and my parents encouraging me to draw, to color, to then paint, the older as I got older. I always realized once I was pretty much graduated college how much those experiences and those times of creating
Hmm.
helped soothe my soul, helped me understand uh, things that I didn't understand at the time, helped me deal with trauma that I was dealing with from my childhood and then teenagerhood. Um, and these children that are experiencing homelessness are in a situation where it's almost like their life is filled with trauma.
Hmm.
And they don't understand what's going on. Literally, yesterday they were sleeping on the street corner, and today they're in this place that seems wonderful because they accept them with open arms and they feed them and they clothe them and they have a roof over their head and they're safe. And at the same time, they're not pleasant places to be.
Yeah.
They're shoved in a room. Now, I'm not saying homeless shelters, I'm not discounting homeless shelters at all. It's just the problem is so large that homeless shelters are doing the best they can, but they're in a room about the size of my room where, I might have one bed, but there's 10 beds, they're bunk beds in here. And in one room, there's infant to grandma's age. Children are in this situation and they're scared. They don't understand why they're there. They were scared when they were on the street last night. They're scared today. And then they're in this place where they're being, told what to do at every single moment, like when to eat dinner, when to go to sleep. There's curfews. Um, the children can't be running around the house, so they're on their beds unless they're being cared for by an adult. So they're confused. They don't know what's going on. They don't understand why now they have to be friends with these other kids that are in the house.
Yeah.
They don't want to eat the food they want to eat because they're used to eating anything else. Like there's so much confusion that goes on in the psyche of a child that's thrown in that type of situation. And unfortunately, homelessness is a cycle. So a lot of times they'll leave the homeless shelter because their caretaker has had enough. And then a few months later, we'll see them back. So it's always bittersweet because we're happy to see them back. But we thought that they moved out and now have a home, but really they were just on the street again and now they're back. So I can talk about the trauma that they're experiencing for days.
So, What I'm curious about is what you found about how the art is, especially as you drew in art therapists to work with you, what you have seen about how the art has helped them heal.
Yeah, so our programs are an hour. So we are at the homeless shelter for a quick, simple hour. And we start the session by even before they enter our room, there's like, I guess you can call it spa music, like very relaxing, kind of background music, very relaxing music. So it already sets the precedence of calmness. We even have like air misters of like vanilla or lavender. So it's this whole environment, like we create an environment for them. And me and the volunteers, we check in. We say, okay, I understand you just went through traffic, you're hot, you're whatever it is, but right now there's the moment of relaxation. So they come in the room, and oftentimes it's, they're dealing with everything that I just mentioned. So they come in the room, harried or hectic or angry because they just don't want to be there, or stressed out, sad, all of the above emotions. And we start the session with a getting to know you, just a quick like little icebreaker game. And then we have a breathing exercise where we'll breathe in and out slowly for depends on the vibe of the room. We might do it 3 times, we might do it 8. And I'm doing this because we pick our hands up and down, and then we have an
That's
imagination.
beautiful.
Yeah, we have an imagination session where we put our heads down on our desk and we imagine something that's going to tie into the art project that we're going to do. So that leading up to everything that I just described is a moment for them to just relax and just be.
Hmm.
So we spend an hour just hoping that they can forget their stresses. It's not going to go away. Their stresses are not going to go away, but hopefully for that hour, they could put those stresses in the back burner. And the imagination session is always something positive, empowering. Let's imagine our favorite day, or let's imagine if the world were filled with gumdrops, and, like just totally like taking the mind away from a stressful moment to something joyful, something peaceful and happy. And then we create art, and it's amazing to see actually after the breathing exercise, never mind the imagination session, how their moods shift. For those that did come in angry or feeling resentful, not wanting
Right.
to be there, they shift from that to, all right, I want to see what this is about. Or like that, then we have a moment to share about what they imagined, and the things they imagine, specifically based on the personality or the attitude that they had going in, it's just night and day. And then we create art, and they're just happy. They're happy to be there. And again, I believe that children are innately happy, and children are innately happy. And they're also stressed out sometimes. They're also, especially because of the trauma that they're dealing with. And seeing that in 1 hour, is that shift is happens 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Like no child ever leaves crying or angry or fussy. They're hugging us at the end. They're giving us high fives. They're wanting to show us their artwork. It's palpable, the difference that we see.
And you would develop a relationship with them, I would think, as you go forward.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see that. We also never know if we're going to see them again because of
Right.
the transiency of homelessness. Oftentimes we do see them for, I would say, 6 months average. Sometimes they are at the homeless shelter for an entire school year. Um, but yeah, it's really beautiful to develop that relationship. And then if one volunteer doesn't show up, they ask for that volunteer, and they create friendships. They create friendships with the volunteers, which also that's really sweet because then they want to draw things for the volunteer and things like that.
Right. Now, through this time, you started out where you were in Atlanta, but you've grew draw change significantly. Can you share how that grew from that original one that you were working with in Atlanta?
Yeah, so we are now up and down the east coast of the United States, and in Ethiopia and Costa Rica. And
That's phenomenal.
yeah, thank you. I also developed what's called Draw Change Blueprint. So you in Halifax, if you decided that you have a homeless population or an impoverished children population that you want to bring Draw Change to, it's this cute little package that we can share with you on how to develop your own program in your own city, wherever you live. So that has led to, we are now also serving a Congolese refugee community in Kentucky. That has been very successful also, and also very interesting to see, you know, different trauma than homelessness, and at the same time, the same exact trauma as homelessness. And interesting to see the commonalities of their trauma.
Now, through this time, obviously, it's going to much more than you. And you'd mentioned you brought in art therapists, but you built up. Let's talk pre-COVID and such. You built up quite a team with this.
Yeah, so we have art therapists, child behavior therapists, and a lot of behind the scenes administrative help as well. And then all the people that run also the people who run, I don't solely run the programs in Atlanta anymore. I go to as many as I can in the United States, and never mind Atlanta, just because I love it so much. But I don't run them anymore. They are 100% volunteer. The ones in the United States and also internationally. These are actually people that found me and said, I want the program. And what I do is I train them, and I also give them ongoing training to facilitate that program in their cities.
That's beautiful. And so, with this shift to working with the kids in the homeless centers, did you find that, because you said the first year or so, you weren't getting any funding for any of this, did you find that that opened the door to some fundraising as you sort of switched and narrowed your focus?
When I narrowed it, or when,
Yeah,
okay,
to
yeah,
the homelessness to
yeah, because funders were like, this lady's just trying to save the world, like, like it was too broad, and it was unrealistic, essentially.
okay.
So there are many people that want to specifically fund homelessness, or um, many people specifically. So our age range is 5 to 10 is our focus. There's also many people who believe and know of the power of art therapy, so they want to fund that. So yeah, it has gotten easier and easier to acquire funding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and but that's even from a for-profit business, that's the basic thing of niche, right? The more you niche and target, the more concrete you can make your offer and your ask,
yeah.
and also the impact. So you know, the last time we touched on this before we started the show, the last time I talked to you was about 2 or 3 months ago, just as everything had hit, and I know you were very emotional because you couldn't get to your kids, right? And you were really feeling that. Uh, how has this situation impacted things? Because your volunteers still aren't able to get to them, correct?
Yes, correct. Um, we still haven't seen them. Um, I'm honestly not even sure how homeless shelters are handling it. I know for a very long time, homeless shelters are not accepting new residents. I think that that's still the case. It just, the world paused, right? And for homelessness, or for homeless shelters, the world is still completely paused. I know some things in some states or countries are starting to move, but in homeless shelters, they're not. We developed a program called Draw Change DIY as a result of all of this. And that is, for the first time ever, we publicized our curriculum in a way that's tailored so anyone can follow it, and you don't need an art therapist or you don't need an art teacher to do it. And we have started, or we have been for a few months now, every single week sending that to the homeless shelters and hoping that the children are receiving it, and hoping that they're All of our homeless shelter programs have our art supplies there left behind from when all of a sudden this happened. So they're able to use art supplies out of our art kits that we have there and complete the projects. So that gives me some solace to know that there's some expression happening. Some those children are receiving something to take their minds off of what's going on, and in a that has a therapeutic aspect. That's
Yeah.
not just coloring, but there's therapy involved in it.
Yes.
Although it's self therapy, I guess.
Yeah. And the it's strange you talk about the trauma that they go through. I imagine that's been magnified with all of this because they've been cut off in so many ways.
Yeah, so it's complex trauma on top of complex trauma.
Yeah.
And then, we haven't even touched the Black Lives Matter movement.
Right.
99% of our children are minorities. Um, a majority of those are African American. So it's just like threefold trauma. Like, I already don't understand the fact that I'm in this homeless shelter or that I'm homeless. I now don't understand that I'm in this house and I have to follow all these rules and get along with all these other people that I don't know. Then they're isolated. Then they're not receiving any education because of the way,
Schools have shut down.
yeah, schools are shut down. But for a lot of, or most of America, online schooling happens.
Right.
Not for them because they don't have computers. Most, if not all, homeless shelters have computer labs, but that's under a very structured environment. I know for a fact that none of our, or one of our programs out of 10, those children have continued to receive schooling. So you think about the educational gap just widening because these children, so that one normalcy that they had, which oftentimes school is their safe zone. Homelessness occurs sometimes because of abuse in the household. So now they're stuck potentially with their abuser. It's just,
I know.
yeah, it's like this. Like, I don't even know how
I
to do
just
it on top of one on top of the other.
but one thing that I'll say is that since that last time that we spoke, I know that you're feeling all this still, but you seem to have grounded yourself somewhat in these months. Can I ask what you've done that has allowed you to do that? To because you are so passionate about your kids and so you know you were so upset that you couldn't reach them. How have you been able to ground yourself so you can keep moving forward with this work?
Um, out of necessity. Um, Really out of necessity because my first, for about the first March, April, May, for the first 3 months of COVID, I was just exactly like you said, so worried about them and trying to figure out tooth and nail how I can still serve them. And after, I guess just for June now, I've realized that if I don't get the organization ready for post COVID, when we're able to return to the homeless shelters, and this is where that entrepreneurial hat comes back on. If I don't do that, then what, it's almost like I can't do both, but I have to figure out how to do both. I have to figure out how to continue to serve them and at the same time really, really like focus on how I'm going to be able to, in terms of funding is what I mean. How am I going to be able to best work with them? I don't like to say help because everything that we do is we're sharing with them a
Yeah.
tool. We're not really helping them, but how am I best going to be able to, how's it twisted senses, be able to serve them. So that's what I've been doing for all of June, like really focusing on that aspect of it
So it's about looking forward and how can you be there.
while still staying present to the fact that they're still in this situation. So
Yeah.
it's like every entrepreneur, it's all over the place. You can't stop your accounting because you have to do your marketing.
Yeah. So one thing I've been hearing in your story is that you, it's interesting that the term that's way overused now is pivot, but you've done that very naturally because you started out wanting to do the school program, and then that didn't work, and then you found this avenue that drew you to the homeless kids, and then as things moved, things grew, that you added the art therapy, you added, where does that come from in you? Do you think that ability to see those other opportunities when you're getting stopped, when you're getting stonewalled?
You ask really good questions. Um, I would say for me, first and foremost, my drive. I know that my goal is to reach every impoverished child that could benefit from an express moment in time of creativity. So for my program, it's an hour. Now I understand that that's a big goal, but if I'm aware of a new homeless population down the street from where I live, I want to be there. So if the school system says no, I'm going to try because I'm stubborn and dedicated. But if at some point, I would say also when I can stop working, whether that be daily, weekly, or, go out in nature or something. I think this is where your question is going. When I'm able to stop, or honestly, sometimes it's when I'm laying in bed at night before I fall asleep, I get a lot of ideas, things that I hadn't thought of. Uh, Stopping gives me the freedom to pivot.
Okay, and that's something a lot of people don't let themselves do. It's powerful.
Yeah.
So that brings me to another question. How tuned in are you to your intuition, and how much do you trust it?
Very and 100%.
So if your intuition says go this way and logic and all the facts say that makes no sense, you would still follow it.
Yeah. I triple check on that intuition, but I would follow it. It's also what led me to take the leap into starting a nonprofit
Mm-hmm.
organization because my intuition led me to do it. And I realized all the uh, financial for myself, roadblocks for myself, financial was one of them. Um, Number two was
Yeah.
I have no idea how to do this. Like at the time, I wasn't thinking that I was starting a business, but I have no idea where to start. I have, who's going to listen to me? I have no experience in this. And I really, really, really checked in with that intuition, and was just pushed.
So how did you develop that trust in that intuition? Because I'm very much the same way, but I was a scientist first, and I tested my intuition, and I evaluated, and I proved that it works. How did you come to trust your intuition?
Ooh. Uh, I think I learned to differentiate that feeling in the pit of my stomach and learn what it means. I learned to even feel it
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think I felt that feeling, that pit in my stomach always. Um, and how did I learn to do that? It wasn't from my parents because I didn't grow up, being told that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. Um,
No. Okay. Fair enough. So so let's say think about the genie who just started to discover the homelessness as a need. If you were suddenly to be able to walk through a door and meet her, what's the advice you would give to that Jeanie?
Run away. It's too much work. Run away. Um,
You wouldn't give that.
no, I wouldn't. I would say to her, are you sure you want to do this? Check in with that intuition that we were just talking about. And then after she would say yes, I would say find a team to help you fulfill this. There has to be other people out there that are wanting to do this because I didn't do that. I started all this by myself. Um, find a team and learn to take time for yourself because this is very emotionally heavy work, and try to learn how to not take on the emotions of the gravity of the situation of homelessness. And if you do, because I have to take in those emotions to a certain degree or else I wouldn't be propelled.
Right.
But to learn how to, okay, now I need to close that door and, you know, go for a walk, go play, play with my dog, or, just to learn how to separate the two.
You've got to recharge and nourish yourself to
Yeah,
serve.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty profound advice. I mean, I think for any entrepreneur, social entrepreneur or not, because, so many people do not reach out for help. So many people don't listen to that intuition. Everyone says they don't have intuition, but everyone says, "Oh, I knew I shouldn't have done that." So guess what that is?
Yeah,
Right? You got it. You just don't listen. And then the to be able to stop that honestly is a huge one. Because I know from what that last time we spoke how emotional you were, and we've touched base a couple of times with text since then, but to get to where I see you are now, I'm incredibly impressed that you've been able to say, okay, I feel that, and if I stay there, I cannot do what I need to do moving forward.
it's so much.
Hmm.
It's so much to be able to be in that space that you're talking about that you saw me in. And I think for a lot, and I remember you telling me this back then in March, also, like, you have to allow yourself the time to be in that space. But it's for me, it's a lot to know when to, like, okay, I'm leaving. I'm closing the door on that Jeanie. I'm even if I'm closing it for a day or something. Um, but yeah, it's
And I
a
also
lot.
remember saying there's got to be time to get the hell outside.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And, because it can be hard when you lock yourself in and sort of you get stuck in that.
And stuck for me, it's also stuck in that energy space.
Yes.
Like if I'm upset at anything, it doesn't even have anything to have to do with my business. If I'm upset at something, it's very difficult for me to emotionally get out of that space if I don't physically get out of that space. Sometimes it's honestly just the other room, but often it's, yeah, outside,
Yeah.
um, doing something that I love.
And I find if you can get by water, even, whether it's the ocean or a river or whatever, that's healing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of entrepreneurs now that have been thrown, as you say. The business has stopped. They're saying, I can't do it because they can't do it the way they've always done it. What is it? What advice would you offer to, whether it's social entrepreneurs or other business owners? How, what would you suggest to people that are trying to figure out how to move forward through this?
I would say two things. One is don't stop because we're not in this forever. And the other thing is just like, I mean, you and I probably would have done this virtually anyway because we're not physically in the same space, but you just have to embrace technology. We had to, just like every other business, we had to shift to online. And sometimes I'm communicating with my team, and even though I can pick up the phone and I do, or send them an audio message, or, we're constantly chatting, it's just not the same as being in the room. And sometimes something takes double the amount of time because we're not in the same room, and it's so frustrating. It frustrates me literally a few times every day. And it's where we're at. So it's just, you have to do what you can and not stop. Right now is not, I wouldn't say is the best time to start a business. So,
Well, although, some people have said there is so much opportunity out there to
yeah.
help people because there's so many people needing different things if you can find the right fit.
Right. Yeah, I have friends who work in the wellness industry that are doing great. Even yoga instructors online. And it took a minute because also people weren't wanting to, in the yoga example, people weren't wanting to practice yoga at home.
Yeah.
But I think now the world is more comfortable with, fighting tooth and nail, but they're more comfortable with the web situation, just doing
Yeah.
everything online.
Well, I mean, we were talking earlier that where I live, the provinces around here, we've been COVID free for a while, and it's opening up. But I don't know that I'm ready to go back into a yoga studio yet myself because
Right.
it's not gone forever, right? You don't know when it's gonna come back, and I don't want to risk infecting my mother.
Right. Yeah.
So so it's this delicate balance. You've got to find a way. So, Jeanie, if people want to find out more about Draw Change or to find ways that they can help you,
Draw
uh,
change. Sorry, go ahead. Yep, that's it. It's drawchange.org on is our website, and we're Draw Change on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Actually, on drawchange.org, I have my short story, but a short founder story page where you can learn about me if people are interested in learning about me. It's under About Us.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
there you go.
that's,
And more about your journey,
yeah.
which is beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah.
And what is it that you need mostly at this point? What is it that you really need uh, in terms of support to move forward?
Me personally or the organization?
Okay, both.
Me personally, I need some days off.
Mm-hmm. Smart move.
For me, to not work, I have to not be at home
Mm-hmm.
because I can just not go into my office, but thoughts keep on coming up, ideas and things. Like I cannot shut my, I guess, coming to realize my entrepreneurial brain, I can't shut it off.
Yeah.
And with something like what I do, there's no limit. Unfortunately, there's no limit. There's so many 5 to 10 year olds in the world that could benefit from Draw Change. So days off where I leave the house for the entire day. I live in Atlanta, where the Georgia mountains are beautiful, stunning, and they're just an hour away. But it's COVID, so I don't know. So I need days off. The organization, we are um, raising money to hire art therapists to be on the ground the day we're able to return to the children at the homeless shelters, whenever that is.
Yes.
So that's what we're raising money for, which is kind of like, it's been difficult to raise money for that, honestly, because I believe that the world is in such a state of reaction and not thinking ahead that, so we spoke about me shifting from a reactionary mode to a thinking ahead. And, but it's sort of a catch-22 because the world is in okay, but what do the children need now? I'm like, I get it, but it's such a, but that's what we're raising money for. That's what we're
Yeah.
raising funds for. And all that information is on our website, specifically what our plan is for when we return to the children and what our hope is that we can most, or how we can most effectively return to them when we do return to them.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jeannie, so much for joining me.
Thank you. It
It's
was wonderful.
always a delight.
Likewise. Thank you. And thanks for what you're doing. I think it's awesome. I listened to a bunch of the interviews with
Thank you.
entrepreneurs. Yeah. It's great to see other people's perspective, and it could be very isolating, as I'm sure you know, to be an
Yes.
entrepreneur. And it's a breath of fresh air to see that we are all going through the same things, good, bad,
Yeah.
stressful, not. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah. And whereas I had said I was doing this for June, a couple of things happened. We had to postpone yesterday's interview because of the the interview was ill. So I have two more coming up this week. One tomorrow, one on the third,
Oh, nice.
to close off the the series. And also, just one other thing I want to ask of business owners, entrepreneurs who are watching. I am doing a study on what do entrepreneurs need to be great at to thrive through these times and beyond. It's just one question we want to explore, and I'm just putting the link to that in the chat. If you could just take a few minutes and do that study, would really appreciate it, and you can get the results of that as well. And so we will see you tomorrow with another interview. And Jeannie, I hope you get to get outside, get a little bit of a break. No one keeps Jeannie in the corner there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all for tuning in. We will see you tomorrow. Bye bye.
Bye.